So this is my favorite, and as you can see, well-used stamping platforms from Couture Creations, which is, I believe, either an English or Australian company. So the reason I like it is because it's open all the way around, and I'm going to take a piece of watercolor paper here, and I can just stick it in any size that I want. And instead of magnets, I'm using Sizzix Sticky Grid paper, which nicely holds the paper. And I'm using an archival ink pad because I'm going to be working with watercolor, and we want something that is waterproof. Can be any kind of waterproof ink, but happen to be using Ranger Archival. We ink up that little stamp pretty well and press it down. And of course I like stamp platforms because if I don't get a good image, that ink pad needs to be re-inked. We're just going to stamp it again, get a little bit darker. That's why I like stamp platforms. If at first you don't succeed, you can stamp it again without worrying. Voila. Okay. Nice stamped image. We'll just put that out of the way. And I'm going to be using Tim Holtz new watercolor pencils. I have no particular idea what I'm going to do with this bird. So we'll just take the pencils out. This is set number 1. There are 3 sets of these. And we'll just start with one of my favorite colors, like pink. And they are watercolor, so I'm just going to put a little bit. Well, let's make them colorful here. We'll just go into every other one. Put a little bit of color in each one. And then I'm going to take a brush, water brush. This is filled with water. Get a little bit coming out. You don't want it to be too wet, but can't be watercolor without water. And we're just going to pull that color out. I did stamp on watercolor paper so that we could get a good mix on here. You could use Bristol or any form of watercolor. Look what happens with that. Just a little bit of water and a little bit of pencil. These pencils, they're $24.99 a package, but as you can see how much of it I use, it's going to last forever. So let's go with blue on his second color here. And we just wipe off the watercolor. Oh, I missed a spot in pink, didn't I? Oop. And just wipe off the watercolor brush onto a paper towel and go on to the next color. These happen to be I was very pleased with these from Ranger because normally I use a Swedish brand of watercolor pencils that I like. But since this is a stamp and it is a bird of weird origin, I'm just pulling the color from where it's heavy to other areas, kind of smooth it out. We can go back. You don't want to overdo the coloring. And then in cases like here where it's very small, we're just going to use the pencil as a pencil. Doesn't pay to go in there and try and color it out or thin it out with the water. That looks pretty cool. Okay, now I'm going to take his body. Don't want too much water. Look at that beautiful spread. Okay, one of the other things we do here at Betty's Creative Studio is junk journaling, which is taking objects that you would normally throw away or ignore or just put to the side, and we turn it into art. An example is the outside of this book is an old file folder. And we just used, lost a tag, we used some ink and just a picture from an old book to make the cover, and put a little pocket here, which is where my little tag fell out of. Just cute little thing. Now, this one I'm doing all on a theme of birds. So here's some more just old newsprint and pictures and items that we cut up and put make little pockets out of. Everything in here is recycled. Just an interesting thing. Couple little pockets there. This I did a little flip up. This one flips out, which is where I stopped working on this book. And we'll just continue on. But most of the pages I've either filled with old. Actually, this paper is from 1897. It's from an old book. And we just glued it in with some ink. But this is packing paper that comes when I order stuff, new stuff for the store. We get all this packing paper, and instead of putting it out, we recycle it into art. And this is going to become a whole nice little book that I can journal when I go bird sighting. Another thing that we do at Betty's Creative Studio and teach is heat embossing. Heat embossing is using a plastic finely ground that we then proceed to melt. So first we're going to stamp the image with a sticky ink, usually Versamark or the WOW embossing ink. And I had some black on there, so sorry. I had some black ink still on the stamp. It's not going to make a difference, though. Just want to get a little better impression. I forgot to get my squisher, which helps get a good impression of the. Take that off, move that out of the way. I'm going to put this on a piece of just scrap paper. I'm going to take our plastic, and this is superfine gold embossing powder. As you can see, I'm not afraid of it. I pour a ton of it on, and then I tap off the excess. And everywhere there was ink, the embossing powder is now attached to it. Pour the excess back in here and cover it before I knock it over and make a mess. We're going to get a heat gun. Any kind of brand will do. And turn on the electric and give it a minute to heat up, and you'll start to see, there it goes. The plastic melts and you get this beautiful gold image. I don't know how well you can see it. It's a very pretty raised gold area. And this again can be colored afterwards or just used the way it is as the front of a card. Another thing I like to do here is mixed media panel art, which it's a great thing because there's no mistakes. So basically I am going to take, I gotta shake this one up. I'm going to take some acrylic paint. In this case, I'm using indigo blue, which has matte, opaque, and it also has translucent colors in their coloring. They come in these cute little jars. That's much better looking. And I'm using a dry brush, so we're going to have it dry very quickly, actually. And yeah, I had gotten a little in the navy color on there. And you can see it's pulling up almost green. Look at that. It's interesting. I'm just putting on a thin layer, no particular way, of medium beige, which is an opaque matte. And I'm going to go with, I love this color. This is called Bluebell. And I'm just going to bring some in. And again, this has to do with making layers. You don't want the paint everywhere. You want other colors to show through, and that beige is giving us a green in there, which is really kind of neat. And the last color I'm going to bring in is my darkest, which is in the navy. I'm just going to, actually this is going to look pretty cool. And you'll notice I use the same brush over and over again. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Bluebell because I want this to be a little lighter. Just going to bring a little bit. I mean, I know this is only a 6x6 panel, but I really like the way this is looking. I'm going to get a drop more of the beige. And just, well, that was a little too much. One thing about dry brushing, if it's too much, you just kind of go back in and put your color back over. I want some more of that Bluebell to show. As I said, there's no mistakes. You just do this until it's where you like it. And you'll notice I'm also, one of the other things I'm doing is just going in vertical and horizontal directions. This is going to need to be dried a little bit. Put my brush down. Okay, so next we're going to, once we have it dry, we're going to, and I don't normally do this with archival ink, but it just happens to be sitting here, so I'm going to use it. We're going to use a stencil and make some marks on top of paint that we just did. I like using these brushes because, as you can see, I put a little bit of ink on it and it just goes and goes and goes. Okay, so now I did some stenciling, you can see on top of that. And I'm going to use a stamp, which just happened again to be handy. I don't usually give a lot of thought to a lot of this. And again, the archival ink over the paint is usually your best bet anyway. And I like doing it in black. I don't know why, but that's always been a color for me. And again, I'm not stamping the whole stamp, but rather little bits and pieces of it, make it a little bit more interesting. And again, this is just a quick synopsis of what I normally do with a mixed media piece. We're just making it quick here. I'm going to take a little water on my brush here and some rice paper that I've already kind of cut up, but I'm going to use a little water and shred the edges. And this is a class I pretty much teach regularly, but we do 12 by 16 panels, not these little 6 by 6s. I just wanted these to be in here for show. The water allows the fiber in the rice paper to shred, which you get some really interesting effects with. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to rip you, but there you go. It is what it is. When something rips or goes that way, that's the way it stays. There are no mistakes, just creative opportunities. Okay, wrong glue. Okay, so then I decide where I'm going to place my little piece of rice paper here. So I'm just going to put down some matte medium directly where I want to put my piece of rice paper. I'm going to put it down on the front, and then we're going to cover it to kind of seal it and edge it into the paper. It came out gorgeous. Look at how it shredded all the way around. It looks really cool. I like that. I am very happy with that. As you can see, it may have looked strange at first, but we've got a little piece of art going here. And the Bluebell paint that I liked so much really brought out the color in the bluebirds. But we're not quite finished yet. Normally I would take the paint and go along the edges and kind of blend that into the whole background, but I just really like the way that it's just sitting, so I'm kind of just leaving it itself. And one more thing I'm going to do is I'm going to totally make it my own by making marks. In this case, sticking with the black coloring, I'm going to use a black food ball pen. But the other one that if you're going to do the decorations in white, I would recommend the Uniball white gel pen. To me, it's the best one on the market. So again, making this my own. I do this on every piece. This is just my way of marking and making it my own. I will go around, even with all the little pieces, and make little black lines. Some people do dots. You can do stars, you can do wavy lines, you can do pretty much anything you want. But this is just my signature. Is always making these little lines either in black or white around my focal point. And of course I'm just doing them fast for the video. And as you can see, it's leaving little white marks because the paint isn't really dry. You really need to wait until your subject is completely dry before you do the mark making, but we'll go back over them afterwards. I just kind of wanted to give you a little finished product, little piece of art that can go on a little easel and decorate wherever. Done.